are a lot of stories with environmental messages. There's been a bit of an uptick since the advent of man-made climate change gave us a whole new form of species-wide guilt to sublimate through storytelling, but the concept of man versus nature is a tale as old as time, and the moral element of nature good or at least not to be messed with is just as old. Modern environmental narratives tend to focus more on how important it is to protect nature and how terrible it is to harm it on a widespread scale, but a lot of those stories are grounded in more modern concepts like nuclear damage or anthropogenic climate change. Sometimes harming nature is its own punishment, and a world critically damaged by foolhardy humans becomes deeply unpleasant for those humans and their descendants to live in. In some other stories, nature takes a slightly more active role in defending itself, or failing that, avenging itself. Whatever the flavor, the general consensus is that it's never wise to pick a fight with the biosphere you live in, since no matter who wins, you eventually lose. And you'll be happy to know that this general concept dates as far back as ancient Greece. So today let's talk about a short, sweet, and ridiculously unnerving tale of what exactly the Wrath of Demeter looks like. Now this story, like many others, is recounted in Ovid's Metamorphoses, and it begins, like so many do, with a king. The protagonist of our story is King Erisichthon, and he's kicking things off with a bang by clear-cutting Demeter's sacred grove. The reason behind this questionable choice is never explained, not that it would help, because this grove is like mondo sacred. It's where all the dryads like to hang out and party, and it's like deep wilderness. At the heart of the grove is a massive ancient oak tree covered in garlands and prayer tablets and a big flashing neon sign that says "Do not kill." Erisichthon's workers aren't exactly jazzed about the thought of knocking it down, so Erisichthon grabs an axe and forges in to do it himself, and further paints a target on his back by loudly declaring that not only is he going to cut down this tree, he'd do the same thing even if that tree was Demeter herself. At the first strike of the axe, the tree starts bleeding, which Erisichthon takes as a great sign and keeps chopping. Right before the tree gives up the ghost, it speaks and tells the assembled mortals that it is in fact a dryad, beloved by Demeter herself, and Erisichthon's ass is proverbially grass. The tree dies, the people move on, and the dryads, who saw the whole thing, book it to Demeter to fill her in. Now Demeter's none too pleased about the loss of her sacred grove and her favorite dryad, so she spends some time mulling over what exactly to do to this idiot, and settles on a particularly unsettling plan. She sends a nymph up to the frozen, barren wastelands of northern Scythia to transmit a message to Lemos, the goddess of starvation, whose nature is so antithetical to Demeter that they literally physically can't get near each other. The nymph quickly tells Lemos that Demeter's asked her to inflict a curse on King Erisichthon, and then the nymph books it before Lemos's divine vibes can starve her skeletal. Lemos is always down for a little mischief, so she heads over to Erisichthon's palace, slips in at night, and super casually inflicts him with the curse of eternal hunger. Then she heads home to put on the new season of Bake Off while Erisichthon dreams of magnificent feasts and wakes up absolutely ravenous. Now, as king, Erisichthon has plenty of access to delicious foods of all varieties, but no matter how much he eats, he's never satisfied, and in fact just gets more hungry the more he consumes. In desperation to buy more and more food, he ends up draining his treasury and selling off his possessions. He even ends up selling his daughter Mestra, who's none too pleased about her new situation and calls in a favor from Poseidon as payback for him deflowering her back in the day, which as we all know by now happened with alarming frequency. And Poseidon evidently feels real bad about this one because he grants her the power of full-on shapeshifting, which she uses to escape. Erisichthon sees this as a golden opportunity and makes a pretty solid racket out of selling his daughter over and over again while she uses her shapeshifting to escape every time. But of course this does nothing to help with the actual curse, and eventually Erisichthon is so overwhelmed with his ravenous hunger that he just fully eats himself. Alive. Practical takeaway from this whole debacle? Hell if I know, but this is definitely the anecdote Demeter likes to tell when Hades comes over for family dinner and game night.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see 'em